Welcome to She's Black,
where we keep it real, raw, and relentless
about all things black women.
Welcome to another episode of She's Black,
where we keep it real, raw, and relentless about all things black women. So, I'm Kibet.
I'm India.
And we are your host of the She's Black show. We're so excited to have you with us again. Hopefully you caught the intro episode in episode 2, which is going to be turned into a series. So look for the value series coming up soon. You saw the first part of that last episode. Yes, I am too. Because that's so much. It's so broad. So before we get too far into it, go ahead and make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the notifications bell so you don't miss an episode. And if you enjoy the She's Black show on YouTube, support us by hitting the like button and sharing our show with your friends and family. Also, remember you can connect with us on Facebook at the She's Black Show, on Instagram at The She's Black Show, and on www.theshe'sblackshow.com. Also, if you're just listening, or if you want to just listen, you don't always have time to watch, we are on your favorite podcast station. So check us out on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google, etc. I can't name them all, but we will be present. Look for the She's Black show. Actually, on the podcast, look for She's Black. All right. So today's episode is going to be brought to you by Solely Custom. Solely Custom is a wonderful Black-owned, female-owned business that makes custom items, things like custom tea mugs, custom therms or tumblers, also t-shirts, custom baby items. It's absolutely amazing, and you can find that business on Facebook at Solely Custom, Instagram at Solely Custom, Etsy at Solely Custom, and that is spelled SOULEYCUSTOM. Also at www.solelycustom.com. Make sure you visit, let them know we sent you from the She's Black show, and show them some love. All right. So y'all, today's episode is a little deep, a little juicy, a lot of real, a lot of raw, a lot relentless. It is the dangers of being quiet, silent, and private. And so let's go ahead and get into what that's about. We've all grown up. We've heard the saying, ladies are meant to be seen and not heard. Right. We've heard keep your family business in the house. We've heard a whole lot of things that have taught us to be quiet, to be silent, and to be private. And we're going to dig into whether or not that is actually beneficial and how it impacts us today, and how it may impact our children and just our community as a whole. So let's get into it. Let's dig in. So, India, have you ever heard before now, ladies are meant to be seen and not heard?
Yeah. Being a Southern belle is growing up in the South, you hear that all the time. Like, you're not supposed to, the old folks like to say, act like a hooligan.
Right.
Not supposed to act like no hooligan. Don't be loud and stuff. This, I guess that was before the word ratchet.
Yeah, right. That's a new word, ratchet. Well, kind of. Ratchet is part of it. Ratchet got a whole lot of stuff in it, but being loud is part of it, I guess. And I grew up hearing it too. I grew up hearing ladies are meant to be seen and not heard. And I've heard it from women, and I've heard it from men. And
I've actually heard it more from women.
More from women, right. I agree. I've heard it from men occasionally. I don't think a lot of men have been bold enough to like, hey, you're meant to be seen and not heard. Because I wish they would.
I've heard them kind of say it like the little girls,
Right.
But they don't really press it as hard as I've heard like more older women press it. Like, this is what you really need to do. It's like, be quiet more.
Right. Be quiet. Keep certain things to yourself. Control your emotions and not talk about things, or, pray about it. Pray about it is a big way to tell people to be quiet, And I know that's touchy, but it has been a big way of people thinking it's the politically correct way to tell you to be quiet and just go keep it to yourself.
But just so much stuff hid because of just keeping quiet.
Right. And so that's why we want to have this conversation. It is a pretty sensitive topic for me because I wasn't really, as a child, I wasn't really given that much of the be seen and not heard. I think partially because my mother was young when she raised me, so she wasn't adapting to the old people's euphemisms. I can't talk today for some reason. Older people's euphemisms or what they said. But she did really believe in like keeping certain things, you know, in the house. Things that went on in the house stayed in the house. And so that statement of ladies are meant to be seen and not heard, I heard it in church a lot. And I heard it from some older women, much older women. Like when I was a teenager, they may have been in their 70s. But it did impact me still. And there's some things that today I wish I had talked about years ago because who knows how it could have impacted my future decisions.
It was pretty much keep anything that could possibly be remotely embarrassing to the family, keep it in the house. Like nobody outside was supposed to know. But there was dysfunction, you know. Sometimes you need to talk to somebody on the outside.
The whole family needs to talk to somebody on the outside most of the times. And to me, that is, it's putting the ego of others before the healing of self. You know, like as a whole, we'll put our egos or how people perceive us as a higher importance than the necessity for us to break generational curses, for us to get out of toxic situations, for us to heal and be more whole, you know, all together. We sweep everything under a rug and we tell them, you know, don't lift that rug up. So we never deal with it. We never face it.
I think something else was like, thinking about a situation like in my current household with my mom, you know, growing up, we didn't too much just in her house have anything that was going on that wasn't supposed to be spoken upon. But like in the family's household, there were some things that were going on that people go to jail for now. Like there were certain situations like older men doing certain behaviors, like not going all the way, but doing certain behaviors towards children that the whole family knew, but nobody said anything because nobody wants to deal with it. Because once you talk about it, then you're really addressing the situation. It's like
opening a can of worms.
We know it's there, but we really not going to say nothing. Because if we talk about it, then it's an issue that really needs to be handled. So it was something that's like, we don't really talk about it. You just be quiet. You don't say anything that has nothing to do with you. And it was stuff that I saw as a kid, and now as an adult, it's like, oh no, they really should have talked about that. Because some of those girls are grown now and have issues they're dealing with due to nobody talking about it. And sometimes I can't say, particularly for my family, that I don't know if certain things were known throughout the family, like as a collective. But I do know that, you know, being taught to not talk about things so much, I personally experienced things that were not appropriate. And as an adult, I realized were not appropriate. And as a mother, I realized that if I found out my child was like sexually not appropriate, I mean, and for me, it wasn't, you know, a touch or a feel. It was the whole 9 yards of sexually inappropriate behavior. I mean, just to be molestation, you know, just to be blatantly honest, of what it was. So, but, you know, for a lot of my family, this is probably their first time hearing anything about it because you're not supposed to talk about certain things. Did anyone know about it?
Well, it depends on which particular scenario is, you know, it's multiple occasions or different people. And so, in one scenario, there were some people who knew about it and, they were closer family members to the person who was
that was doing the acts.
Yeah, the person in the wrong. They were closer to more immediate family with the person in the wrong than they were to me personally. So when it did come up, it didn't come up in a way to heal or to rectify or bring any justice to the scenario. It came up in a way to protect their family, their family name, or they're part of the family. And in the process, you know, I was shamed. I wasn't shamed publicly, because shaming me publicly would have meant
handling it
publicly.
Yeah.
So it was like I was privately shamed. I was privately treated a particular way, or spoken to a particular way, or handled, or told not to talk or not to say things or do things. And, you know, it was just an uncomfortable burden that I carried, you know, for a long time. And so, I mean, I can't say I forgot about it. Obviously, I'm thinking about it right now.
Yeah.
But I didn't let it, like, I didn't consciously allow it to, like, boggle me down or just be a thing. But I do feel that it impacted how I viewed the male-female relationship and correspondence into my young adulthood. You know, for a long time, I just didn't understand how we appropriately related to each other.
It's about like men and women.
Yeah, as far as boundaries,
Okay.
as far as me having my own rights to being able to, you know, say what I want, what I don't want, what I'm not comfortable with, when I am comfortable,
Yeah.
you know, it impacted that, you know. But, yeah, so we just really need to talk about what I feel like is a toxic trait of teaching our children and our family members, and particularly our daughters,
Yes.
to be quiet or to be private or to be silent. I'd rather have a little loudmouth girl to say whatever is on her mind, and I just kind of have to teach her the productive way of saying it, than to have someone who's afraid to say anything.
Yeah.
Because you never know what is going on when you're not around, because they're not talking about it.
Because
you know?
of what I saw, you know, growing up happening to other girls, times where my children have, you know, stayed with family members. It hasn't been a lot, but have stayed with family members. It's something like I always pull them to the side. Are you okay? Like, did anything happen? Are you sure? Did anything happen with this? Is that, you know, I ask because I don't want it to be a situation where something happened to them. They're scared to say something. And I'd be like, if anybody ever try to touch you here and there, you scream like crazy. Even if they say they're going to kill you, they're not just scream, you know. So, because I don't want them to experience that. So, like, even with my baby, you know, I just had a baby with her. You know, I still be kind of iffy if somebody's watching her and there's a male figure anywhere around. I feel iffy because of what I saw. You
Right.
know?
And that doesn't mean that all, you know, men or all situations are suspect or uncomfortable, but the way that we
family
can,
a lot
right,
was a lot of the ones. What they say usually if somebody get raped or molested, is it usually someone you're kin to or no?
and it's usually because there are people who have access to you. They have easier access to you, and they have easy access to your children. And especially as mothers or adults or parents, we trust that this is family and they're going to take care of family. And it's funny because I read an article maybe a day or two ago, and it's not, don't quote me, it's not entirely, you know, in my mind, but it was a mother of a 16-year-old girl who was out of town, and the 16-year-old girl was at home, and the mother's boyfriend of 5 years was there with her. And the last conversation that this mother, or last time she heard her daughter's voice, was the daughter was calling her to say the guy was acting strange and to help, she needed help. And he killed her. And went there, he shot her. And it allegedly, or apparently, it appears as though she was raped prior to being killed. And this is like, you know, the mother's boyfriend of 5 years. So I'm assuming she must have trusted him. I mean, at this point, me and my husband have been back into a full committed relationship for 5 years. And we have 3 kids. So I can imagine the amount of trust that a person has in a person after that amount of time. And you would not think that this person would do anything to harm your child, you know?
This kind of go back to, I know we can't stay on this subject for too long. Actually, this kind of goes to what goes on in the house stays in the house. Because there are a few situations I know where the mother didn't really trust the boyfriend, and they still allowed them to be around the child because I guess they didn't feel like they wanted to break up with their boyfriends for their children. I don't really understand how, you know, you could stay with someone knowing that they're attracted to your children, or looking at them a certain kind of way, or that you know they're sexually involved with your teenager, you know, and continue to stay with them. I don't really understand like how that is, but there are a couple situations where some people are like that, where they choose the relationship over their children.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's sad, and that speaks to being quiet, private, and silent. Because even if, for me, I don't ever imagine being that woman, but I can only imagine as the child within me would hope that my daughter, that if she were ever in a scenario that I wasn't protecting her, that she would still feel comfortable enough to say it to someone else.
Right.
Because if I am, you never know why the mother didn't protect her. Maybe the mother was being threatened. Maybe the mother's livelihood was being handled a particular way. Maybe the mother was just irresponsible and prioritized wrong. We don't know. However, I'm sure most occasions, except for the little bitty babies, they go to school, they interact with other people, they're away from the scenario that presents the danger. Mm-hmm. And so if they were able to have those conversations and feel comfortable about it, then the possibility of being saved or prevention happening increases. It doesn't make it absolute. Yeah. Because it could still be investigated, and, you know, other people could lie and cover up things. You just never know. Yeah. But it does create some level of intervention. And so we just have to, in my opinion, get really comfortable with teaching our children and our friends and those around us to talk to someone, find a safe space, get it out, you know, and it is not always sexual things. Sometimes it's verbal abuse. Sometimes it's just neglect, period. Sometimes it is just watching someone else be abused, you know, and not knowing how to say this is a problem. Also, sometimes it's seeing someone suffer in silence. Someone that may be going through depression, or suffering from any other mental illness, and you notice there's something wrong, or there's a change, or there's something that needs to be addressed, but you haven't, in your household or within your friends or your family, there has been no safe space created to talk about those things. It is so important to be able to do it. So I want to talk about what are some of the things that you think keep people from, other than just saying keep your business in your house, as an individual, are there things that have ever kept you from saying something about something that may need to be addressed?
Saying like something within...
To anyone. Like say something needs to be addressed. And
pretty much saving face. Saving face, you know. I think not everyone, a lot of people like to be looked at in a certain kind of way. You know, like, I have my version of myself, you have a version of me. Like, everybody has their own version of each other. Mm-hmm. And I think they probably just want to be seen as a certain kind of way, or like the old folks say, oh, you know, they want to be better than what they are. I hate that saying, because I feel like you can be what you want to be.
Right.
But, you know, like, I think they want to keep a good image in people's head that this family is okay, they're normal. Nobody wants to be labeled as, oh, that house on the street, well, you know, so-and-so lives there, or don't go over there, be careful if you go there.
Right.
I think it's saving face, pretty much.
Saving face. I think for me, some things that have kept me personally, aside from other people's influence, kept me personally from talking about things is, one, if it was related directly to me, immediately thinking that I was going to be the one that was in trouble. No matter what the situation was, it could not have been my fault at all. But I always felt like if anything was not right about situations surrounding or dealing with me, that I was going to be the one to blame. And so for not wanting to get in trouble, I wouldn't say things. Also, mind your business, the idea of minding your own business, kept me from saying a lot of things that I saw or witnessed about other people, because, you know, not so much worried about what the outside people would feel, but the person that it was happening to, would they be angry if I told somebody about their situation? Right. And so, just at the core of it, people pleasing, not wanting to become the bad guy by saying something.
That's
and
a big
so,
one.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that in itself creates an opportunity for things to happen that need to be talked about where we don't talk about them. So for me, one thing that I came to realize about the necessity to have transparent conversations about things that may have happened in your house or your childhood. I referred to it on the introductory episode, dealing with like why I felt this kind of show was important. And that was the time when me and Nikki were at your house and we were all having, I don't know how we got on the conversation, but we just started talking about childhood stories. And we were talking about how, you know, everything from the kind of whippings we got to the kind of punishments we got, what we were allowed to do, what we weren't allowed to do, you know, just how we had to handle certain things at the home. And, you know, before that moment, there were a lot of things that I experienced as a child that I honestly thought like I got dealt this selective hand that to me was just horrible. And, you know, I didn't have like a woe is me syndrome, but I did have a why me syndrome. Like, what about me attracted that energy, right? And so I spent a lot of my time in life thinking, I need to figure out how to break this karma or get rid of this energy. Yeah. And in that moment, it was like, okay, I'm not the only one that shares these experiences. And so it made me think about how many other women in my life had I gotten close to or known, had an opportunity to talk about certain things and just never did. And so, you know, I think when I moved here, I had to be 25. Let me say I was...
And you never had really talked to anyone else that was going through what you were going through? That you, like, even, like, close to a childhood that wasn't, like, all happy?
No, because when, in that time frame, because for me, personally, you know, my perspective, my point of view on my life when I was young was that there was just a lot going on. And...
do you feel like you had, like... When you think about your childhood, the overview, do you get, like, happy feelings? Or is it, like...
So, from this point in my life, it's very mixed. Because I've learned to appreciate the journey. The whole journey. Good, bad, ugly, in between. And I feel like it brought me to where I am today. And I wouldn't trade who I am right now for anything in the world. Which means I would have had to take... everything that made me feel uncomfortable in the past. But if you ask me the same question, let's say 10 years ago, for me, my childhood, I could have just skipped it. I don't remember, to me, I didn't have happy, warm, fuzzy feelings. It wasn't just, oh my God, it's the worst thing in the world. But no, happy, warm, fuzzy feelings? No, not really. I remember feeling... I felt a lot of wanting to be included and not included. I felt a lot of...
That was even when you were around family?
Yes, but...
like, you know, other kids in the family and stuff?
Yeah. Well, see, my situation was a little... It wasn't bad. Like, people go through it, but it kind of... My perspective, my point of view on it was different. Because I didn't have a close-knit family. I didn't have a family where it was like, you know, just always a bunch of us. There were moments where I was around a bunch of relatives and things like that. But the time that I spent around a bunch of other kids, for me, it wasn't it was my sister's father's side of the family. Yeah. So my stepdad, who was actually not my stepdad any longer because my mother and him were separated, they had a big family with a lot of cousins that were close to the same age. And when I was around them, I was in the same age. And, you know, so there was that, but that wasn't my family. Yeah. So at some point, I kind of got separated from that. And then I wasn't close to, or it wasn't... Well, it turns out there's a lot on my side of the family, but I wasn't close to them. So I kind of was just kind of hanging in between, I guess. And then with my sister and brother, they shared a father that I didn't have. And I knew it. And so it kind of, even though to me, he was like a dad, but it was like constantly being made known that this is not your dad.
Yeah.
And so it kind of created a space of, I don't have what every other kid has. Just that simple. But also I was the oldest, so I had the responsibility of the other kids. And by just my nature of me being me, and the things that I liked and I like to do, I lived in a small town that there was nothing that catered to kids like me.
Yeah.
So we were kind of, I guess, tucked in our own little corners. So no, I never felt included. I always felt like I wish there were people around me that were like me. Yeah, I was like the picked on kid. I wasn't bullied.
Yeah.
But I was picked on. I don't know if that's the same thing.
I think,
but
I think that's different. I think back in the day we used to get picked on, but now they get straight up bullied.
Yeah, I wasn't what today's form of bullied is, but I was like picked on or like, shunned. I was kind of like the left out person. That people always found a way. It's so weird because there was a young lady who I felt really, really close to when I was young. And we, at some point, we were not close anymore just because as you grow up and people get friends and they click off, some people get into cliques and some people don't. And I just ended up not in a clique. And as adults, when my husband and I, early on in our, right before we got married, it turns out that this particular person worked with him, even though it's a whole nother city. They ended up working together. And when she realized that I was his mate, his girlfriend, his fiance at the time, her response was, "Oh, I know her. When she was young, she was interesting." And this is somebody that when I was young, I felt like, we were good friends. Like, what does interesting mean?
I know, right?
And so for me, it kind of it reinforced I was just a weird girl, I guess. So no, I don't have warm, fuzzy feelings about being a kid. I remember a lot of responsibility, a lot of work, and a lot of wanting a place to belong. That's what my core memories are of being a kid. And so, like I said, for that conversation for me now, I don't feel like that we shared necessarily, but I do feel like some of the mother-daughter dynamics of our relationship were shared.
Yeah.
We had a lot of similar mother-daughter dynamics. And that was a big thing for me, too, not understanding that. And as I've gotten older, I understand it even more. And I think it's going to make me hopefully, a great mother to my daughter. But that dynamic was just, I didn't understand it. And I didn't talk to people about it because I thought it was just me.
Yeah, because when I was growing up, I used to see, like, a lot of people have these awesome relationships with their mom. And I used to always want that. I thought it was just mine where we just wasn't the closest, But then when, we talked about it the other day, I was really surprised that, that y'all had kind of, not the same story, but had, issues with y'all mom growing up.
Right.
I was really surprised.
And it's so weird, though, because you do hear a lot now, as an adult, you hear that the mother-daughter relationships are more difficult than, the mother-son relationships, right? And I don't really get it because I feel like, for me, I longed for a close mother-daughter relationship. I still right now look back and say, I wish, I would learn how to do my hair or, put on some makeup or play dress up with mommy or, little things like that I feel like, I wanted it to be not just my mom's friend, this is my best friend, no, but I wanted my mom to be my example of what I was supposed to be like when I was a woman. And not that she was a bad example, but I don't know that she was an example. And not all her fault.
I like that.
It was just not available, or by the time she was available, she was too tired. I don't know. It's a lot of things. But we just didn't have the relationship for that to blossom. And so, and maybe we just didn't understand each other. I don't know. But she wasn't a bad example. She just wasn't an example at all,
I think,
for me.
I try to kind of think about, I think so for some of us, our parents were still trying to find themselves in the midst of raising children. So they they probably, like, I don't know, I know your situation was way different, but I think a lot of parents maintained kids, like they made sure you were safe and got food, but I don't think that's the same as like raising your kid and getting really close to them.
I agree. And then the other thing, I think, for us in our age frame or our time frame, I'm an 80s baby. You're an 80s baby. And so, that means our mothers were 60s, 70s, hopefully not 70s, maybe 60s, 50s for some of us. But they were in that era that for Black women, they were systemically separated from their men. And what I mean by that is welfare.
Yeah.
Just being honest. The welfare system systemically separated Black families. And a lot of people will say, no, that is absolutely not true. If jobs are limited, if it's difficult for parents, Black parents in particular, to provide for their children, then obviously we go to whatever assistance is available for us. In most cases, it would be like housing, people who lived in housing projects or all kind of things. And I remember we didn't live in a housing project, but every one of my aunties did.
Yeah.
And in those housing projects, they would come and inspect. And I remember them knowing when people were going to come and inspect, and if they had like a mate, a boyfriend, a baby daddy, a husband even, if they had someone that was male that was attached to their family in that male role, they had to hide away all their stuff. They had to get rid of it. They had to do all these things to like not make it look like that man lived there, because now you gonna get kicked out of the housing potentially. And so if you're at risk of losing provisions like housing for the sake of a relationship, then chances are you stay single. And you stay single.
You're right about that.
And if you're single, you got to get a job, sometimes 2 or 3, depending on how many kids you have. And oftentimes, I don't know about you, my mother worked a lot of overnight jobs. And so she worked overnight. She wasn't there at night. She's sleeping in the daytime. She's just not available.
Well, that sounds like me.
Yeah, she's just not available. And it's not that she doesn't want to be available. She's just systemically not available.
Yeah.
And so, that impacts it as well. So I think there were a lot of things that impacted that dynamic. But that dynamic in itself, or that mother-daughter scenario, it played itself out in my life, particularly in its own way. And I kind of always felt like, I'm not going to say unwanted. I'm not going to say I ever felt unwanted. But I did feel irrelevant, I think is a good word. Like, not that I wasn't wanted, but I wasn't that important.
I understand that.
Yeah. And so, those things were kind of hurtful. And so whenever other things happened, I always grouped it into that I'm not important box. And so when I was able to hear, like, I don't think you shared the feelings of feeling not important. I don't think you felt like you weren't connected or you longed for a connection. But a lot of the behavioral patterns between mother and daughter that existed for me also existed for you. So it made me unbox all of that, take it out of this box of not feeling important to my mother to it just being more of a communal thing than it was a personal to me thing, if that makes any sense.
That makes sense. I get it.
So I think talking about, the things that go on in your house, for me, if those conversations were had way earlier, then I would have carried that a lot less in my life. Like, I could have released that a long time ago.
Right.
At this point, I was probably 28, 29 years old before I even got the notion that this is just not about me being not important. Right. And so had I had conversation with other people and someone else went through what I went through, then I would have been like, oh, this is bigger than me. And so it doesn't mean that there's something particularly wrong with me that is attracting this thing.
Yeah.
So having transparent conversations and talking about things and not being private, not being quiet, not being silent, paves the way for healing. That's, just my personal opinion. So y'all, we are getting to the part of our segment that is super important, that really gets us with being raw, being real, being relentless, and that is our hot seat question. So we do have one that we've already decided upon. I don't know if you came up with any while we were talking. I did not. I did not. But if you did, then you can shoot it at me and I'll be 100% honest about it. You got one?
I have one.
Okay. You nervous to ask me?
No. I said you can go on and ask me the question. I'm ready.
Okay, so the question, I'm going with this one right there. So, what is something you truly regret being private about?
I regret when I was married. I regret the things that were going on in the marriage, keeping it silent. Because when I first moved to Albany, I didn't really have no friends up here. You know, you were like one of my first friends, you and Nikki. Being silent so long about the controlling issues, the cheating and stuff, I didn't really want to talk to anybody about it because it was embarrassing. And I felt like, okay, well, if I'm moving on past it, I don't need to talk to anyone about it. But when I did start to open up about it, you know, you see that, and other people talk about their relationships, oh, this isn't right. And it makes you stronger, you know, in those situations, especially when it got to the part where there was abuse. I kept that silent, like really silent, and I really shouldn't have, because a lot of people go through stuff like that and they don't talk about it and they stay in it longer than what they should have. Like when it got to the abusive part, I didn't stay long. You know, I pretty much went on and got out of that situation. But I feel like I should have talked to more people about it and been more open about it. But I just didn't want anybody to look at me, oh, that's the girl who used to get beat, oh, this right here. Like, nobody, I don't want to be no victim, you know. So I didn't talk to many people about it. And a lot of people don't even know. Like, a lot of people, even his family, think, you know, oh, he's this great person. And I'm not saying he's a bad person, but during that time, he was a horrible husband. He was a horrible husband. But since I didn't speak on it, besides his mom, nobody really knew what was going on with that situation. And I wish I would have reached out to more people about it and not just try to keep it in the house and keep it private. Because the parts that did get out still didn't make me look good, you know. So it would have been better if I would have gave my version of the story. Because the parts that got out made me look bad. At least I could have gave my, you know, put my spin on what happened. So yeah, I do regret keeping a lot of that silent.
Okay. You want to shoot your question? You want me to answer the same question?
You go ahead.
Answer the same question? Okay. So I have a couple of things. Two things, actually. One is pretty to the point and simple, and we kind of spoke on it earlier. Mm-hmm. And that was the, you know, when I was a child being sexually molested. Not speaking on that.
Who do you wish you would have told, though? I
have no clue. At this point, somebody. Honestly, somebody to be, you know, I don't know what else to say. But, because I don't know who I would have felt comfortable telling. However, what I do know is that I didn't understand a healthy male-female relationship dynamic for a long time because of it. I also didn't understand the rights that I had to my own body. Mm. I thought that being liked or being included or being paid attention to, that the cost of it was my body. You know, like, I just give you my body because you gave me this. Mm-hmm. You know, so either I would shun attention, period. You know, I would just kind of back away and go into my own space and not get it. Or I would pay the cost.
Yeah.
One or the other. And in most cases, I mean, thank goodness I was kind of protected in a way that the opportunity to kind of shun the attention presented itself more than paying the cost. Yeah. However, the shunning the attention part led to something that I still heal from, which is not knowing how to respond when someone is giving me attention. Even my husband. I don't necessarily know how to respond to a touch or a gaze or a compliment. Is that why you really
don't like people in your
I don't like people touching me. I just don't. But, and it may be. Who knows? I don't know where it stemmed from. I just know I don't like being touched. I don't like people being in my space. However, I think that, you know, I reject attention more than I push away from it. If someone does show me attention, I push away from it. I don't know how to take a compliment. you know, because I'm always thinking there's a price for it that I don't want to pay. And so I wish I had conversations about that. So that's a simple one. A bigger one is me and my husband, of course, we've had a history, and the earlier part of our history, we basically had a secret relationship, just being honest. We had a secret relationship because we were afraid of what other people would think about us being involved with each other, because we were both acquainted with each other's exes. And I'm not talking about like a loose acquaintance. It wasn't my best friend, nor was my ex his best friend. Me and him were more closer friends. But because we were such close friends, I knew his ex, he knew my ex. And we kept the relationship private. And keeping that relationship private created an opportunity for some things to happen that shouldn't have, and that were not healthy, and were extremely uncomfortable. And I wish I had been more open about, you know, that actually saying this is where we're at, and being okay with talking about the fact that we were in this relationship, you know? So that's a whole nother conversation that we'll probably get into later, but those are some things that I regret being private about.
Okay.
Did you have another question?
No.
No? All right. So
that's pretty much it. I think we got kind of heavy tonight.
Yeah, tonight was a little bit deeper than previous conversations. So for you all, if you have any thoughts on it, or any other questions or any comments that you want to make, obviously feel free to leave some comments in the comment section on our YouTube. Also, remember to hit us up on our social media. Let us know what you think, what you want to hear, you know, how it made you feel. And on next week, we will have the first, will it be first? It will be the second. I'm sorry. It will be the second Deeper Dive Live with Tashi and Shazzy. So this is a really, you know, I think a worthwhile conversation. And I think, you know, getting into that conversation with them on next Wednesday will be amazing. So make sure you connect. Make sure you check for the Deeper Dive Lives. We'll post it out. Set yourself a reminder so that you don't miss out the opportunity to just become a part of our show. And again, we look forward to it. We thank you for joining us. Again, tell us what you think. Remember to subscribe, to like, to share. And then if you're listening to us on a podcast station, leave a review. Let us know what you like. Let us know what we can do better, because that's how we grow. So please leave a review for us.
First in the message, you know you can.
Yes. And share. So today we have our closing affirmation of the week. And this is, I speak my truth so loudly that those offended by my truth cannot bear to stay in my presence. So thank y'all, and y'all have a lovely week. Goodbye.